So we'll go to our next person, which is Carol Davis, who's the chairperson of the Illinois Conservative Union. Carol studied election law and procedures, and became an election judge, pinpointed weak areas which enable fraud, and worked to find solutions. She was appointed the Director of Election Protection Initiative for DC-based FreedomWorks. Carol will come up and share. Actually, you can share as much as you because we've got an extra half hour here, so talk as long as you want. All right. Oh, so this is about more or less solutions, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. Yes, I am vertically challenged. Well, I just appreciate this opportunity so much. And for those who are watching the live stream, we're actually passing out a handout, but that is available for download or will be later today on our website, our election website, which is ieip.org, ieip.org, and you can download the handout that says Top 10. So again, I'm Carol Davis. I have been given such wonderful opportunities by the Lord to get involved in this subject, which has been a passion of mine for over a decade. First, I want to thank Eric and Jennifer and the IFI sponsor of this event, and thank you for that rich and beautiful worship music and worship time. It was so soul-filling. I really appreciate that. And then again, the rich and valuable history that we've learned and the civic education that we've gotten today from these phenomenal speakers. This has been such a fulfilling time for me because I've really learned so much. So I just really thank you for this. What we do is we started as a Tea Party group back in 2008 when George Bush and Hank Paulson bailed out the banks in Wall Street. A lot of people think the Tea Party movement started when Barack Obama was elected. That is not true. It started as a backlash against George Bush and Hank Paulson using our tax dollars to bail out the banks. So that's how we began over a decade ago. And we grew to be one of the 10 largest groups in the nation. And about 5 or 6 years ago, we transitioned into a state-level organization, the Illinois Conservative Union. But all along through the years, one of our passions has been election integrity. Of course, being based in Illinois, we know we've got real problems here. So what we've done is, again, studied what the real-life solutions are. We actually have put together a seminar, and I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, but we realized years ago that we weren't going to get much help from Illinois officials with this problem that we've got. And we realized early on that dirty voter rolls is one of the biggest chunks of the problems that we've got. So about 6 years ago, when I happened to be in DC on one of my trips, with FreedomWorks or one of the other organizations, I went knocking on the door of an organization called Judicial Watch. How many of you have heard of Judicial Watch? Great organization. And I had heard that they had had some success suing states under federal law, the National Voter Registration Act, which was passed in 1993, and there's a Section 8 provision in there that directs the local authorities to make sure the voter rolls are cleaned and maintained. That NVRA law is actually known as motor voter, so we know how that has opened a doorway to getting even more questionable voters on our rolls. So I visited with the folks at Judicial Watch, and it took me the better part of 6 years to convince them to come alongside my organization, Illinois Conservative Union, and sue the Illinois Board of Elections to force them to open up those voter rolls. And we got a really good judgment last June that kind of kicked the door open for other groups to come in and get access for those rolls. But we're not happy with a one-day snapshot of the roles because we know that it's a constant evolving process. So what we have been doing is taking this down to the local level, and we are teaching and training groups all across the state. We've trained hundreds of people. Groups invite us out, whether they're political organizations or grassroots organizations, and we teach them how to, our suit was the top-down approach, our lawsuit was the top-down approach, but our bottom-up approach has got to be the local task force on the local level. So we teach them, become a precinct committeeman in the party of your choice. Hopefully the parties that want to actually have fair elections. And if you're in a party that doesn't want fair elections and doesn't want to clean the voter rolls, then you might examine whether you're in the right party. So these local task forces, we teach these frontline people who are getting a legitimate list from their local county clerk because they've got a seat at the table, they're part of a political party, to clean the voter rolls on the local level. No one knows better than the local precinct committeeman of who's passed away, what kids have gone off to college or what kids have gotten married and moved out of state. And that is where the ongoing process of keeping our voter rolls clean must start. So that is critical. Then we move on to accountability with your county clerk. Our seminar teaches you how to clean the rolls from the bottom up, but we also teach you how to use the Freedom of Information Act with your local county officials who are responsible for running the elections on the local level. And those Freedom of Information Acts force transparency and openness into the process. You can study the results of those, and you can find out how your local authorities are following best practices. As Hans said, we've actually used the Heritage resource to develop best practices for Illinois. And so there is a blueprint, folks, that every responsible election authority should be following. And the analogy I like to use is, say you and maybe your parents before you and maybe generations before you have worked so hard and you've built a little bit of a life savings. And you've nurtured that, and it's been by the sweat of your brow and, tears and anguish to put aside a little something that will secure for yourself and your prosperity a good life, a good and meaningful life. And so you're looking for somewhere to secure those funds. And so you're going to examine local banks, and you're going to visit bank managers. And your local bank manager, you sit down with him, you've got your bag of life savings there, and you say to him, well, tell me, how do your books go? Who do you call in to make sure everything's legit? And he kind of hems and haws and isn't very transparent. And you say, well, what are your procedures for handling, large sums of money? And kind of towards the end of this loose conversation, he says, well, at the end of the month, maybe we're a couple thousand over, a couple thousand short, who knows where it comes and goes. Now, would you put your money in that bank? How much more precious is your value, your ballot, your golden ticket to freedom than a dollar bill? Why are we not demanding accountability, transparency, professionalism from our local election officials? We must use the Freedom of Information Act and transparency and citizens in the local task force to hold their feet to the fire. Then we teach you how to dissect the data. You can get data from your local election authority if you've got a seat at the table, as I say, and you examine that data and you find out, are there anomalies? Our wonderful Vice Chairman Jan Shaw over here is our data guru. And some people, like me, their eyes glaze over when they try to read a spreadsheet, but Jan loves spreadsheets. And so find the people for your task force who love spreadsheets and dig into that data. It reveals so much. So this is all part of what we teach in our Guardians of the Vote seminar. Then, I am so fortunate to be a part of a working group of the top election leaders in the nation, of which the Honorable Ken Blackwell is a member, and Hans von Spakowski, and my dear friend Cleta Mitchell heads this group up. These people are phenomenal, and when Cleta started it almost a year ago, she invited me, little old me, to be a part of that group, and I'm just so honored to be a part of it, and I've learned so much. And what we did was we all worked with the people in Virginia. How many people are familiar with the great victories that Virginia had in November 2021? Phenomenal, phenomenal. And we knew how they were doing that because people like Lynn Taylor from the Virginia Institute were working with us, and Ned Jones. And what they did was they formed a coalition throughout the whole state of people who were interested in election integrity. And it was hard. I'm not saying this is easy, but like Ken Blackwell reminded us, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And eternal vigilance is not easy, folks. Anyone who's ever had a toddler in their house knows eternal vigilance is very, very hard. And it's exhausting. But, you know, it could be a matter of life or death, so you have to do it, right? So what this working group did and watched and helped the state of Virginia, they brought this wonderful coalition together. They all left their logos and their egos at the door. They did 50 in-person trainings throughout the state in the months leading up to November. They did webinar trainings. They did online trainings. They did person-to-person trainings. And they trained over 4,500 election workers to work as volunteers or election officials throughout the state. And then they worked to create a shift schedule. Isn't that phenomenal? A shift schedule. Now, we have 40 days of early voting in Illinois. They have 45 days of early voting in Illinois. So they had to map out all of those shifts for early voting days and election day voting, and poll watchers and election judges to work on the vote by mail ballot processing. And they kind of looked at the most troublesome areas like Loudoun County and Fairfax County, and kind of did a concentric circles out from there until they kind of covered the whole state. So in their most troublesome areas, according to Lynn Taylor of the Virginia Institute, they actually covered about 95% of those shift positions with volunteers that they had wanted. And then statewide, because there's some areas of the state that were less troublesome, it averaged out to about 85%. Can you imagine what Illinois would be like if we could do that here? And that's what our Guardians of the Vote seminar is doing. As we go across the state, we're training hundreds of people to implement the Virginia model here in Illinois. Folks, we can do this, but it's all hands on deck. So then what their motto was is eyes on every ballot. And that's how they did it with all these wonderful volunteers. Now, another big aspect, especially here in Illinois, is our vulnerable voters. And they have a wonderful organization in this group of Cletas that I'm working with, a lady named Lori Roman. She is focusing specifically on plans to help the vulnerable voter population. And we know that many of the workers in our senior care facilities, I'm sorry, are SEIU union employees. And I'm sorry, you cannot get more far left than the SEIU. So we need to make sure they know that we are not only putting eyes on every ballot, but eyes on every election worker in those places. And some people don't know, but my organization, Illinois Conservative Union, back in 2020, when the virus was raging and all the senior care facilities were locked up tight, we worked with one of our wonderful attorneys on our advisory board, David Shestokas, who is now running for Attorney General. And we drafted a letter of a statutory notice letter, and we sent it out to 850 administrators of nursing homes throughout the state of Illinois, basically warning them someone's watching, and you have a statutory responsibility to your vulnerable voters to make sure you're following the law. So those are the kinds of things that Lori Roman's organization is going to be working on throughout the country. So I want everyone to be encouraged. There's a lot going on. So you've got your early voting and your vulnerable voters and your election day at the polling place and your vote by mail. A lot of bases to cover, and in every single one of those, we need well-trained election judges in Illinois. Those are the people that conduct the election in each polling location. And poll watchers and your local precinct committeemen who are busy cleaning the rolls throughout the year, they should all be poll watchers, because if they're working that local polling place, they know if somebody's dead grandma walks in and declares she's going to vote today. So that's the kind of local task force, and Cleta and I have been traveling all over the country teaching this. Cleta has come up with this wonderful citizens guide. We provide the link on our website to download the Conservative Partnership Institute Citizen Guide for building these task forces, as well as in Illinois, taking our Guardians of the Vote class will teach you Illinois-specific techniques. Then, of course, you're going to make sure you're finding out who are the seasonal and temporary workers that are being hired in your elections office. Where do these people come from? You know, who are they? What are their political leanings? Are they, tipping on the scales as they're working? You need to, as citizens, be demanding that kind of transparency and accountability. Now, I have been an election judge in Illinois for 18 elections. Thank you. And I have also been a poll watcher. In fact, I was a poll watcher in Michael Madigan's district in the 2012 primary. Was that interesting? I saw dead people vote. So it takes all hands on deck. Of course, you need an attorney general and a state's attorney who are willing to prosecute when you see dead people vote, but that's another story. So anyway, then as these things are going on, you need a great incident reporting system, which we have developed a great election incident report form, because guess what? Rumor, innuendo, and hearsay don't hold up in court, folks. And unless we're going to add to Han's database of prosecutions, we're going to need facts. And I say even these poll watchers should carry some legal affidavits with them, because say they come into the polling place and your poll watchers and your election judges, they should be working as a team. You should know who are the people that are, share your values in that polling place, so that when a voter comes in and says, I'm here to vote, and I'm signing him in and I'm saying, oh, this poll book shows that you requested and voted and returned a vote by mail ballot. And the voter says to me, I did no such thing. I always vote in person. I've voted in person all my life. And he's all upset because now he has to cast a provisional ballot because he swears he didn't get that vote by mail ballot and voted. Then your poll watcher is listening carefully and he's saying, another one that's forced to cast provisional when he says he hasn't voted already. Then your poll watcher can follow him out of the polling place and say, would you like to file a legal affidavit about what happened to you just now? Because then we can see the patterns. With the fullness of the incident reports, we can see the patterns and we can drill down and find out what's really going on. And then, of course, you've got post-election audits where you're sharing data, between the poll workers, the poll watchers, the watchdogs, and but hopefully you've got to catch it before then, because once that ballot is through the tabulator, folks, it's done. It's done. So these are really the things, the detail that we drill down to in our Guardians of the Vote seminar. And every participant gets a 32-page book that reinforces everything we say. And it covers, since our state rep couldn't be here today, it even covers some of the provisions of the Illinois Election Omnibus Law, which was signed into law by Governor Pritzker in June of last year. And that has got some nightmarish provisions in it, folks. So those are things that we teach you about that you can be aware of as we're going into this election cycle. Because you know what? In a state like Illinois, when we do our presentation, I have one slide that comes up and it says Idealville. And it shows this gorgeous home on a lake, beautiful weather, sailboat, just ideal. And we say, this is Idealville. In Idealville, all the men are courageous and handsome. All the women are beautiful and gracious. All the children are intelligent and well-behaved. And every voter votes on election day, shows a voter ID, and then at the end of the day, everybody from each party comes together and counts the votes, and everything comes out beautifully, and everyone lives happily ever after. And then the next slide I show is a little shack in the middle of the prairie. This is Realville. This is Illinois. And we're not going to get voter ID anytime soon because we have supermajority of people on the left who don't want voter ID. As we've learned so much how beautifully that works, and so there's a plan by not implementing that. And so we need to deal with the realities of what we're dealing with in a state like Illinois. And in fact, when I spoke in Pennsylvania just a couple days ago with Cleta at her election summit there, and I heard some of what went on in Philadelphia during 2020, I said to the group, I said, I think Chicago and Philadelphia are sister cities. In fact, I think they're evil twins. So anyway, but that's just what we can do for Illinois. So we encourage all of you who are out there listening, sign up for Guardians of the Vote training, and we are going to be doing webinars with the different segments, so we'll help you with that. And then just real quickly, on side 2 of your handout are top 10 action items for honest elections. And these are things anyone can do, and I encourage you to copy this and give it to friends, neighbors, hand them out on the street. Everyone can do these things, and basically, it's a summary real quickly. Become a precinct committeeman and help clean the rolls on the local level. Become a well-trained election judge, a board member of your local election authority, or even a paid employee of the clerk's office. Become a well-trained poll watcher. You have to be credentialed by your local party or candidate. You can't just walk in there and say, I'm gonna watch it today. Get your credentials, and let's have eyes on every ballot. Consider putting together a team to take shifts watching the drop boxes. Huge problem, folks. True the Vote did video and did some GPS work, and they are revealing how treacherous those drop boxes are. So you can Google True the Vote and GPS and you can find their videos. But we need to be watching the drop boxes. Maybe there's a local business who the left tried to put them out of business the last 2 years, who would be happy to train their security camera on a local drop box and keep an eye on it. So just a few things we can use. Now this is something you can help, we're tuned in politically. We're the group that lives, eats, and drinks, political stuff. But friends, neighbors, family members don't. So help them a few weeks prior to the election. Go online and help them check their registration status. They're doing some funny business with our Illinois voter registration system. Our wonderful researcher, Loretta Savi over here, has kind of started digging into that. Make sure you haven't fallen off the voter rolls. So when you show up to vote, you're not surprised that you have to suddenly re-register after voting in the same place 30 years. So check your registration status, help your loved ones check their registration status, make sure you're good to go. And if there are problems, resolve it before voting starts. so that you don't run into any obstacles. Now, here's a wild card that I want you to consider. And those of us who are conservatives, this completely goes against our grain. But they did try this in Virginia. And, you know, the verdict is probably out as to whether it was effective, but it's certainly something worth praying about and considering. With early voting, consider going in the very first day of early voting and casting your ballot on a paper ballot that you feed through the tabulator yourself. Make sure you check with your clerk and find out where the location is that you can do that, because early voting locations sometimes don't have that option. But they called it, in Virginia, they called it claim your name and secure your vote. Because if your vote is locked in on the very first day of voting, nobody can steal your name and your vote because you're already locked in. Well, at least chances are a little bit less of them stealing it. So consider that. And please, all of us, we have to conquer the crisis of confidence that the 2020 election has instilled in so many. And so many good things are happening all around the country. Great laws are being passed. Again, the resources are there from these wonderful organizations that Mr. Blackwell and Hans von Spakowski are working with that have listings of great legislation. Help fight the takeover of our local elections by the federal government. We won a couple of battles, but we might not have won the war on that one. And then please, a few weeks prior to the election, go to your county website and download your sample ballot, please. Vet your candidates, mark up your ballot, because I am shocked how often our organization gets calls from people after the election and we find out they were handed the wrong ballot because they didn't recognize the candidates. Download your sample ballot, help friends and family to do that. That's the way we can win, folks. So please, let's all do it. All hands on deck. And thank you so much for your time. Oh.
I wanted to ask you if you, because our state representative is not here, can you give us one or two of the new laws
Certainly, yes.
that Illinois has passed?
Yes. One of the provisions in the new omnibus law is a permanent vote by mail list. Let me tell you what's happening, folks. We are a whisper away from becoming an all vote by mail state. Now, we want to keep that under the radar. We don't want to show the left that we're actually making a little progress anywhere, because they will run down to Springfield and boom, you are an all vote by mail state. But they use incrementalism to get this through. So, for example, in California, Gavin Newsom, they tried to recall him, and then what did he do to punish everyone? He made California an all vote by mail state. And that means everyone on the dirty, polluted voter rolls is automatically going to get mailed a ballot, not a ballot application, a ballot. So that's what this permanent vote by mail list is. You can opt in to never have to request a ballot, you'll just automatically be mailed one. Now, the devil's in the details. Can we ever pull anybody off that list? How many ghost voters are going to be put on that list? We need to be forming these local task forces and this statewide coalition, because this is a nightmare in reality, folks. So that's one of the bad things. Another bad thing is, when in Illinois, when you are going to be 18 by the next election, you can register to vote when you're 17. So you're 17 years old, you're in high school. You used to be able to go to your local guidance counselor or whoever was the voter registrar in that school and register for the upcoming election. They have now opened our high school to third-party organizations to come in and register voters. So it's like throwing the doors open to MoveOn.org, Resist, Indivisible, every far-left group you can. So conservatives need to be forming voter registration teams and getting them into the high schools too. Those are a couple of things. I'm not sure if you want more.
That's good, thank you.
Okay.